Radar scans have detected 8 vertical shafts, each stretching over 2,000 feet beneath the pyramids of Giza. Official access? Denied. In this episode, we're diving into the recent claims of a massive underground city hidden below the pyramids, and the growing controversy over why no one is allowed to investigate further. If a lost city was buried under the most famous structures on Earth, would we be told? Or would it be quietly erased from the record? Comment what you think they're really hiding under Giza. Imagine waking up to headlines claiming that a vast underground complex, complete with vertical shafts, chambers, and long-forgotten tunnels, was just discovered beneath the Egyptian pyramids. That's not fiction. That's exactly what researchers from the University of Pisa and the University of Strathclyde are now claiming. Using synthetic aperture radar, a satellite-based imaging technology, they say they've detected what looks like a sprawling subterranean network stretching beneath the Giza Plateau. The deepest structures? 8 massive, vertical, cylinder-shaped features, each descending more than 2,100 feet, deeper than any known Egyptian shaft. The data, published in preliminary form but not yet peer-reviewed, immediately lit up fringe archaeology circles and alt-history forums. But this time, it wasn't wild speculation or blurry YouTube footage. It was radar returns. It was geometry. It was measurable. And that changes everything. So far, no government excavation has followed. No museum press conferences. No official confirmation. Instead, the news was met with near-instant skepticism, and in some cases, silence. Critics say it's impossible, but very few have addressed the specific details of what was allegedly detected. Here's the twist. Even if the radar data is misread, even if it's exaggerated, the magnitude of the claim and the technology behind it demands more than a shrug. You don't detect an entire subterranean grid under the most iconic site in archaeology and just move on. At least, not without asking why no one's willing to dig. Let's look closer at what was actually reported. According to the research team's SAR data, the most prominent anomalies aren't small. They're enormous. 8 symmetrical, vertical shaft-like structures, each measuring hundreds of feet in diameter and plunging over 2,100 feet beneath the surface of the Giza Plateau. That's deeper than the height of the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. These aren't random voids. They're organized, evenly spaced, and in some cases connected by what appear to be corridor-like features or spiral passageways. The shafts were described as cylinder-shaped anomalies that recur in a grid-like pattern across a known protected zone. In satellite imagery, they register as consistent interruptions in the subterranean density profile, suggesting something artificial or at least non-natural. They don't align with any known geological formations, nor do they match the typical collapse patterns found in karst landscapes or old quarries. They're too regular, too engineered. Why does that matter? Because geometry is rarely an accident in nature, especially when it's symmetrical and deep. And in archaeology, shape often tells a story long before the first artifact is uncovered. If even one of these shafts turns out to be real, it would shatter everything we thought we knew about the construction, purpose, and even era of the Giza complex. Suddenly, the pyramids stop being monuments and start looking like the surface access to something much larger. If the idea of vertical shafts wasn't wild enough, the same radar imaging also pointed to something even more unsettling. 5 sealed chambers within the Pyramid of Khafre. Not beneath it, inside it. According to the researchers, these chambers appear to be perfectly rectangular and stacked in a precise geometric configuration. One of them allegedly contains a large, solid object consistent in shape and density with a sarcophagus. Let that sink in. This isn't speculation based on vague hieroglyphs or secondhand legends. This is being reported as raw, measurable data pulled from satellite imagery designed to detect structural variation beneath solid rock. The researchers used SAR at multiple wavelengths and synthetic modeling to rule out known cavities, collapse zones, or geological interference. Yet, despite the startling implications, there's been no archaeological follow-up, no physical inspection, No planned excavation. And here's where it gets stranger. The internal structure of Khafre's pyramid has long puzzled Egyptologists. Compared to the Great Pyramid of Khufu, it's always seemed oddly simple, less ambitious, less complex. But what if that was only because its secrets were sealed more effectively? What if what we see is only the upper floor of a much deeper design? A sealed room, a potential sarcophagus, and still, no entry allowed. Almost as soon as the underground city claims hit the media, mainstream voices rush to discredit them. Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities called the research unsubstantiated. Others declared that synthetic aperture radar couldn't possibly penetrate 2,000 feet of solid rock. Case closed, they said. But let's ask the obvious. Why was the rejection so fast and so absolute? SAR has been used for years to detect underground water channels, tunnels, and even hidden ruins beneath dense jungle. The idea that it can't be applied to limestone plateaus is up for debate, but the key word is debate, not dismissal. In this case, many critics didn't engage with the data, the imagery, or the methodology. They just waved it off as impossible. That's not science. That's orthodoxy. And the researchers aren't amateur YouTubers. These are academics affiliated with respected institutions, publishing findings based on a documented imaging process. Whether the data is accurate, it still demands independent review, not ridicule. Think about it. If they're wrong, a simple verification scan would disprove the anomalies. But if they're right, it means something was intentionally buried, not just underground, but from history itself. Before the satellites, before the radar scans, there were the maps. And some of them show features that shouldn't exist. Several 19th and early 20th century surveys of the Giza Plateau include oddly placed voids, chambers, and corridors never accounted for in modern site diagrams. Some even show large rectangular structures beneath the surface, marked with dashed lines and question marks, as if they were suspected but never explored. One in particular, drawn by engineer John Shea, Paring in the 1800s, includes a long corridor beneath the Sphinx leading west toward the Khafre Pyramid. It was noted, sketched, and promptly forgotten. Why? Because it didn't match the mainstream model. And when data doesn't match dogma, it gets buried. The new radar scans? They align disturbingly well with some of those century-old notations, suggesting they may not have been guesswork at all, but early detections of a reality we're only now equipped to measure. And then there's the geometry itself. The layout of the shafts, as described by the research team, forms a symmetrical pattern that appears deliberate, not the result of erosion, fault lines, or natural caves. If real, this would make it the most advanced subterranean engineering ever discovered from the ancient world. So the question isn't whether ancient Egyptians had the tools to build this. The question is, did someone before them already lay the blueprint? For decades, alternative historians, mystics, and fringe researchers have whispered about the Hall of Records, a legendary vault of ancient knowledge said to be buried beneath the Giza Plateau. Edgar Cayce, the 20th century sleeping prophet, famously predicted that a hidden chamber containing scrolls from Atlantis would be discovered beneath the Sphinx or near the pyramids. His prophecy was ridiculed for years, until seismic scans in the 1990s identified a rectangular void beneath the Sphinx's front paws. Now, with new satellite radar suggesting a vast subterranean layout nearby, the legend is stirring again. What if the so-called hall isn't just a chamber, but a whole network? A city of vaults, shafts, and sealed rooms, protected across millennia not just by sand, but by secrecy. Here's where it gets interesting. Cayce's prophecy didn't say the hall would be found when technology allowed it. It said it would be revealed when man is ready. If true, that readiness may be less about physical tools and more about collective willingness to confront a different version of history. The idea of a hidden archive containing knowledge from a lost civilization sounds fantastical, until the data starts to align, until radar shows voids, until sealed doors are found, until silence becomes the loudest evidence of all. Whether you believe in Atlantis or not, the fact remains, we're finding what legend told us to look for. And still, no one's digging. Why? Is it myth or memory? Let's say for a moment the radar data is solid. Let's say it really does show shafts, sealed rooms, and structured geometry deep beneath Giza. That leaves one simple question. Why can't we just dig? You'd think a discovery of this magnitude would spark an immediate expedition. A multinational research team. Funding, cameras, streamed excavation. Instead, nothing. Silence. Egyptian authorities haven't granted excavation permits. The official stance? There's nothing to see. But history shows otherwise. In the 1990s, seismic scans revealed a chamber under the Sphinx. The result? No follow-up. When Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most famous archaeologist, was asked about it, he dismissed it without explanation. And now, with new evidence surfacing, not from fringe theorists but from university researchers, we're still hearing no digging. If it's all nonsense, then a quick excavation would debunk it. Easy. Case closed. But if it's not nonsense, then the refusal starts to look deliberate. This isn't just about logistics or funding. It's about gatekeeping. Who controls the story, who writes the past, and who gets to decide what counts as real history. And sometimes, protecting the narrative becomes more important than uncovering the truth. When permission is denied despite the evidence, the silence becomes suspicious. One of the loudest criticisms of this discovery centers on the claim that SAR, synthetic aperture radar, simply can't detect anomalies that deep underground. But let's unpack that. SAR isn't just point-and-shoot radar. It's a complex, data-rich imaging technique used by geologists, military analysts, and even archaeologists to detect structures hidden beneath dense surfaces, snow, forest, even sand-covered ruins. SAR works by bouncing electromagnetic waves off the Earth and analyzing the return signal for distortions, densities, and shapes. It's not an X-ray, but it can map subsurface formations by identifying areas where those waves behave abnormally. When paired with interferometry and multi-frequency scanning, SAR has revealed underground tunnels, chambers, and even entire lost cities, such as Angamuco in Mexico. So can it work on the Giza Plateau? Technically, yes. The limestone base isn't impenetrable to radar, especially at the wavelengths used in this new study. Could false positives happen? Absolutely. But so can false negatives, and that's exactly why further investigation is necessary. Dismissing SAR outright ignores a mountain of successful applications. It's not about whether SAR can reveal a full architectural blueprint. It's about whether the signals indicate something worth digging for. And according to this new data, they do. So again, we ask, if the tech is real, the team is credible, and the data is intriguing, why is nobody challenging the claim with boots on the ground? Sometimes the refusal to look says more than what's found. If even one of these chambers turns out to be real, it would rewrite the story of ancient Egypt forever. So if you're into hidden history and forbidden archaeology, hit subscribe. We're just scratching the surface. Let's be blunt. Giza is one of the most politically sensitive archaeological zones in the world, controlled tightly by Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. Access is limited, permits are rare, and foreign researchers are often kept at arm's length. Even when scientific data like SAR scans suggest something incredible, the power to investigate or suppress lies with a handful of gatekeepers. But why the tight grip? Part of it is cultural protectionism. Egypt's national identity is deeply tied to its ancient legacy. Major revisions to that story, especially ones suggesting outside influence or forgotten civilizations, aren't just academic, they're political. Then there's the academic layer. The institutions that control what counts as valid history often have long-standing theories and reputations to protect. If a hidden city exists beneath Giza, it doesn't just rewrite textbooks. It undermines the credibility of decades of Egyptology. And the result? Discovery becomes dangerous. Inquiry is treated like heresy. The moment a theory steps outside the accepted timeline, it's branded fringe, even when backed by data. History, we're told, is a matter of evidence. But what happens when evidence is inconvenient? Real science invites investigation. Censorship invites suspicion. This isn't the first time a massive discovery was written off, only to resurface decades later with vindication. Take Troy, for example. For centuries, it was considered pure myth, a city invented by Homer. That is, until Heinrich Schliemann unearthed its ruins in the 1870s, proving that legends often have a core of truth. Or consider Göbekli Tepe, a megalithic site in Turkey that predates Stonehenge by over 6,000 years. Mainstream archaeology didn't just ignore the site, it actively resisted investigating it for decades. Why? Because its complexity didn't fit the accepted timeline. Because it raised too many uncomfortable questions about who built it and how. Sound familiar? Now compare that to Giza. A high-tech discovery method reveals massive anomalies beneath one of the most studied places on Earth. But instead of curiosity, we get backlash. Instead of a dig, we get denial. The lesson here is simple. History is full of premature dismissals. And when those dismissals are based more on fear than fact, we have to ask, how many truths have we buried? When we label something fringe too quickly, we don't just miss potential discoveries. We stunt the evolution of knowledge itself. The past doesn't care what we believe. It only waits to be unearthed. Here's where it gets truly mind-bending. What if these underground structures aren't just related to the pyramids, but predate them by thousands of years? The SAR findings suggest a complexity and depth that seem out of place within Egypt's dynastic timeline. After all, why would builders dig over 2,000 feet into bedrock when the pyramids themselves, towering as they are, don't require anything that deep? Some theorists suggest we're looking at the remnants of a far older civilization, one that built underground first, possibly as protection against cataclysm, then vanished long before Khufu ever laid the first stone of the Great Pyramid. In this view, the Giza Plateau wasn't chosen by accident. It was inherited. The pyramids may have been constructed atop pre-existing structures, much like medieval churches built on top of pagan temples. And if true, this changes the game. It implies a deep time continuum of sacred architecture, a site used, reused, and revered by multiple civilizations over millennia, each layer hiding and hinting at the one below. Mainstream archaeology tells us Egypt's history began around 3,100 BCE. But what if the ground beneath Giza has a longer memory? If the pyramids were Phase 2, what was Phase 1? Long before radar or satellite scans, there were whispers in stone and scroll, ancient texts that hinted at vast underground worlds beneath the sands of Egypt. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, described elaborate subterranean chambers and passageways beneath the pyramids. His accounts were dismissed by many as exaggerated or symbolic. But now, they look like blueprints waiting for confirmation. Even older are the texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary fusion of Egyptian god Thoth and Greek Hermes. These esoteric writings speak of hidden halls, libraries of ancient wisdom, and vaults meant to outlast floods and fire. Sound far-fetched? Maybe, until synthetic aperture radar starts mapping precisely those kinds of voids beneath Giza. Then there's the Islamic historian al-Makrizi, who in the 15th century claimed that the pyramids were built to preserve knowledge from an earlier world, one doomed to destruction. He even described hidden mechanisms that would protect sacred chambers from intrusion. These weren't just myths. They were warnings and instructions. Modern science is now aligning with ancient testimony. Across centuries and civilizations, stories converge. There's something buried deep beneath the plateau, sealed for a reason. So why are we still pretending those stories were just stories? Giza isn't the only ancient site with rumored or confirmed underground networks. From the Derinkuyu city complex in Turkey, which stretches multiple stories beneath the surface, to the recently unearthed tunnel systems under Teotihuacan in Mexico, a clear pattern emerges. Advanced ancient societies built downward. Why? Some theorists believe these civilizations were safeguarding sacred knowledge. Others argue the structures were designed for protection from climate disaster, war, or something we've long since forgotten. Either way, The recurrence of vast subterranean chambers beneath key megalithic sites across the globe is no coincidence. And it's not just tunnels, it's geometry. Many of these sites share uncanny similarities in layout, astronomical alignment, and design philosophy, even when they're continents apart. That's hard to write off as parallel development. It feels more like shared origin or shared instruction. So if other ancient cultures built sprawling underground structures, why not Egypt? Especially at Giza, its most sacred ground. Maybe we've been looking at the pyramids as endpoints when they're actually entrances. When the same design shows up around the world, it stops being coincidence. What if the purpose of these underground structures wasn't to preserve artifacts or protect treasure, but to leave behind a message? Some researchers argue that ancient builders, aware of cyclical cataclysms or global resets, intentionally hid their knowledge beneath the earth, not just to archive it, but to ensure it survived. In this view, Giza becomes less a burial site and more a failsafe. The underground city, if it exists, may not just contain historical records. It could hold astronomical data, timelines of destruction, or technological blueprints designed to guide humanity after a collapse. And a strange lack of access? It might not be oversight. It might be part of the original plan. Consider the flood myths in nearly every ancient tradition, from Sumer to the Maya. Many mention beings or sages who preserved knowledge underground before disaster struck. Why would Egypt be any different? If this chamber system beneath Giza was sealed not just for secrecy, but for timing, to be opened only when we're ready to understand it, then every refusal to dig, every locked door, might be exactly what was intended. We're not just looking for treasure. We might be standing on a warning label. For centuries, the secrets of Giza remain buried because we lack the tools to see beneath the surface. But that's changing fast. Artificial intelligence, LiDAR, and deep penetration satellite imaging are revealing anomalies in places long considered settled science. We're now seeing the unseen, not by digging, but by decoding. AI models trained on geological and archaeological data are identifying underground cavities, density shifts, and man-made symmetry far below the Giza Plateau. And they're not working alone. Combined with LiDAR and thermal imaging, patterns are emerging, shafts aligned with the stars, chambers radiating from a central point, voids that suggest purpose, not randomness. It's no longer guesswork. It's algorithmic probability. And that probability points to intelligent design on a massive subterranean scale. But here's the twist. Many of these findings are coming from outside Egyptology. Data scientists, engineers, and independent researchers are now revealing insights traditional archaeology has missed or ignored. The past isn't silent. We just haven't been listening with the right tools. Now we are, and the ground beneath Giza is starting to talk. If this underground city is real, if it's not just natural voids or misreadings, but a deliberate, ancient construction, it doesn't just change our view of Egypt. It rewrites the origin story of civilization itself. Mainstream timelines place the dawn of complex societies around 6,000 years ago. But an engineered structure stretching 2,100 feet beneath Giza suggests planning, labor coordination, and technology at a scale that shouldn't exist that early or be hidden so long. And yet, here it is. Not in some forgotten jungle or underwater ruin, but beneath the most studied site on Earth. That's the real shock. For all our museums, documentaries, and doctoral theses, the ground beneath the pyramids may still hold secrets bigger than anything we've dared imagine. It begs the question, what else have we missed? What other impossible structures lie buried, dismissed by orthodoxy, unexamined by fear, or deliberately ignored? And if we finally dig and confirm what's been hiding in plain sight, the impact won't just be academic. It will ripple across science, religion, politics, and human identity. Because once you prove that one ancient story was wrong, you have to question them all. If an underground city beneath Giza really exists, it wouldn't be the first time ancient anomalies have been found, then quickly buried under skepticism, red tape, or deliberate suppression. Consider the pyramids in Bosnia, the undersea ruins at Yanaguni, or the massive stone spheres of Costa Rica. Each raised massive questions about human history, and each faced immediate dismissal. What links them all? Not just mystery, but a refusal to ask deeper questions. When findings don't fit the mainstream model, they're quietly sidelined. Grants dry up. Excavations halt. Academics go silent. A pattern emerges, not of fraud, but of fear. Fear of rewriting everything we thought we knew. Now, with the claim of a vast city beneath Egypt's most iconic site, we're watching that pattern repeat. The find is immediately branded, misinterpreted, the researchers discredited, the technology dismissed. But ask yourself, if this were truly nothing, would it need to be silenced so forcefully? It's no longer about one discovery. It's about whether we are ready to break the spell of convenience and accept that history may be far older, stranger, and more interconnected than we've been told. This isn't just a forgotten city. It might be part of a forgotten world. Let's pull back. 8 cylindrical structures over 2,100 feet deep. Sealed chambers. Geometric alignment. Radar anomalies confirmed by multiple independent systems. Historical texts that described exactly this, centuries before any technology could verify it. And yet, no excavation, no press conference, no transparency. Were we protecting? Could it be ancient machinery? A lost archive? Evidence of a civilization predating Egypt by thousands of years? Or something even more disruptive? Knowledge that redefines who we are, where we came from, and what came before us. Until someone digs, and the world gets to see what lies below, we're left with shadows, whispers, and increasingly undeniable patterns. Maybe we're not ready for what's beneath the pyramids. Or maybe someone decided we never would be. But make no mistake, something is there. And the ground beneath Giza hasn't told its last secret. We came looking for cracks in a stone monument and found fault lines in our entire understanding of history. Whether it's an underground city, a lost civilization, or something stranger still, one thing is clear. The story of Giza isn't over. It might not have even begun. And if the most studied place on Earth still hides a secret this big, what else have we overlooked? Stay curious, stay questioning, and if you're ready to go deeper into the forgotten truths of our past, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, drop your theory in the comments, and join us for the next chapter in the mystery. Because this is just the beginning.